Glad to talk today about one of the greatest stories of all time by one of the most influential writers of the 20th century, Flannery O'Connor. She wrote A Good Man is Hard to Find in 1953, and with that story, in many ways, she sort of opened up the literary field to the idea of a family being killed in the forest by potentially a madman. So this story has a lot to do with the nature of good and evil, and also the degradation of society over time. One thing that marks it is the vividness of the characters, the smart alecky children who sort of represent how kids these days are terrible. The father who doesn't really seem to do much of anything, but he is angry enough that he throws a cat against a tree at one point, and at another point he says something so mean to his mother that the criminal actually gives him a reprimand. Then there's the mother, who's largely absent from the story, except she's described as her face was as broad and innocent as a cabbage, and then later on, after the accident, it's said that nobody was really hurt, and the mother only had a scratch on her face and a broken shoulder, thus demonstrating how unimportant she is. Then also there's Red Sam, the guy at the restaurant that they stop off and visit, who seems to believe himself, and the grandmother believes him to be a good man, but then he also sort of bosses around his wife. So there are all of these sort of conflicting characters. And that doesn't even get to the two key characters of the story, the grandmother. Many people are confused about the grandmother. What do we make of her? Is she a good person, like a good old-fashioned Christian, or is she, in fact, sort of the evil character of the story? She does a lot of good things. She kind of holds the family together. She seems to parent the children in a way that the children's parents don't want to do. But then she's also a racist, who has multiple instances of racism in the story, and she also, in many ways, could be blamed for the death of her entire family, because she is the one who brought the cat along that caused the accident. She's the one who said that they wanted to go off the road to find the house. She's the one who didn't correct him when she realized that, in fact, the house that they were after was not even in the same state. And lastly, of course, she's the one who recognized the misfit. So all of these are things that she did that potentially put her family at risk and make her sort of an evil, selfish character in the story, despite on the appearance being a good person. Then there's the misfit, who on the other hand, he's a crazed murderer who has a memory lapse about why he was in prison in the first place, calls himself the misfit because the crimes that he committed don't seem to match the punishment that he's paid for it. He doesn't know, in fact, whether he killed his father or not, but that's what they had sent him to jail for. This is a big cause of mystery in the story. Did he actually kill his dad or not? Because if he did, then obviously he kind of deserves it, and maybe he's nuts. But if he didn't, then maybe he was wrongfully put into jail in the first place, and everything that's followed is just sort of unjust revenge for that. Then there's also the curious thing about the misfit, that he actually seems to be more conscientious and thoughtful than anybody else. Some people have put forward the idea that the misfit, despite the fact that he's a killer, is actually kind of an angel of mercy within the story. That he's the one who's in the story to provide the hypocritical grandmother with an opportunity to recognize a true religious act of grace, in which she reaches out to another individual and tries to do something worthy of going to heaven. Whereas before, due to her selfishness, she probably wouldn't have been worthy. The primary thing that causes the misfit trouble is that he can't get around the biblical idea of Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead. If you're not familiar with that biblical story, it's an interesting one, and it's relatively simple on the surface. Jesus went to this guy Lazarus's house. Lazarus had been dead. Jesus goes and says, poof, voila, Lazarus is now alive. This causes a lot of problem for the misfit because he's incapable of making the leap of faith to believe this. And because of that, he's not able to get on board with the idea of Jesus as the Savior. As he says, Jesus was the only one that ever raised the dead, and he shouldn't have done it. He thrown everything off balance. If he did what he said, then it's nothing for you to do but throw away everything and follow him. And if he didn't, then it's nothing for you to do but enjoy the few minutes you got left the best way you can. So this whole entire element of him being very conscientious, he's somebody who quite likely has thought more about religion than the grandmother has. And this is sort of an interesting thing that Flannery O'Connor, who was a religious person herself, is making a commentary here, in that the person who considers herself potentially to be a good Christian, the grandmother, in fact, is kind of a terrible person, and the person who is more conflicted and more thoughtful about God and about religion, the misfit, is the one who obviously is somebody who society frowns down upon because he's a criminal. So there's an interesting sort of moral conflict in this story that makes it a truly compelling piece. So that brings us to the key element of the final movement of the story. So the misfit brings up this whole entire issue, this whole question of whether Jesus in fact raised Lazarus from the dead. And the grandmother, who supposedly, is somebody who has faith, then she says, right there towards the end, it says, "Maybe he didn't raise the dead," the old lady mumbled, not knowing what she was saying, and feeling so dizzy that she sank down in the ditch with her legs twisted under her. So, in this moment, the grandmother has what is called a crisis of faith. She loses the faith that she always thought she had, which in a sense proves that she was never really that faithful to begin with. Because when she was pushed to the brink, when she was pushed to a spot in which all the rest of her family has already been killed and she's the only one left, she is not able to maintain the belief system that she has spoken about so far but never actually embodied. Okay? Got that? So here's the key. The story moves on. "I wasn't there, so I can't say he didn't," the misfit said. "I wished I'd have been there," because he said, hitting the ground with his fist. "It ain't right I wasn't there, because if I'd have been there, I would have known. Listen, lady," he said in a high voice. "If I had have been there, I would have known, and I wouldn't be like I am now." His voice seemed about to crack, and the grandmother's head cleared for an instant. She saw the man's face twisted close to her own as if he were going to cry, and she murmured, "Why, you're one of my babies. You're one of my own children." And this is the key moment of the story. This is where the grandmother realizes that the misfit, this criminal, is in fact somebody who she is responsible for, and that it is part of the great mystery of the universe and the wonderful beauty of all of reality, and that she and him are on the same plane, and that fundamentally this is the first time in the entire story that she has actually literally cared about somebody else more than she cared about herself. So she reaches out to him, and he's so stricken by it that he shoots her dead. Okay? So, if the misfit is merely a criminal, then he just was shocked by her act of compassion for him and killed her. If he is in fact an angel of mercy, if you take that interpretation, this was the moment that was necessary for her to be able to achieve salvation. If she hadn't reached out, if she had died selfishly, she would not have been worthy of heaven. But because she reached out to the misfit and she cared about him more than she cared about herself, it demonstrated that there was goodness within her and that she could die at this moment and achieve the valid and worthy death that she truly, would have been better for her. So, all of that is very, very complicated. But it's the thing that makes the story a profound and interesting thing. And then the story goes into downward action from there, where the misfit, picks up the cat, and the other two henchmen come back, and, the misfit says she would have been a good woman, the misfit said, if it had been somebody there to shoot her every minute of her life. And this, right there, that's an opportunity for the misfit to point out that the grandmother, only when she is really pushed to the edge of things, is she given an opportunity to be something more than a terrible person. So, ultimately, there is this fundamental question of good and evil. Who's the good one? Is it the grandmother? Is it the misfit? In many ways, they both have goodness within them. In many ways, they both have badness within them. And this story, for all of its complications, is what makes Flannery O'Connor and the story itself one of the greatest works of literature of the 20th century.